Hello, I'm Zoe Brunt. I'm Head of Marketing here at SG Accounting, and I'm joined today by Dan Mepham, who is our Managing Director. I'm going to be asking Dan some quick-fire questions all about IR35 and the changes coming up in April 2021. So, first things first, Dan, what is changing next April?
Yeah, so we've had these rules, IR35 rules, to deal with sort of disguised or deemed employment. So this is aimed at contractors that if they look a bit more like an employee, then they should be taxed like an employee and shouldn't be sort of taking the tax advantages of working through a limited company. So these IR35 rules have been around for 20 years now. And what's changing in April is the private sector rules are going to become aligned with the public sector rules. So in 2017 we had new rules on the public sector to say that it was the public sector body that was going to be making the decision now about whether a contractor is caught or not caught by IR35. So those rules have been in place for 3 and a bit years now. It was always intended for the private sector rules to come in the year after, then the year after that. Because of circumstances, it's been delayed. We now think with 99% probability that these are going to come in April 2021, and it just aligns the rules. So now, if you're working in the private sector as a contractor, it's going to be the private sector organisation that's going to make the decision about your IR35 status now, where previously it would have been you as the contractor.
Okay, great, thank you. So on the flip side, what isn't changing about the rules?
So what isn't changing, if you're already in the public sector, then nothing's changing there. If you're in the private sector but you're working for a small company, so these rules are only coming in for medium and large end hirers, so your end client as a contractor. So if you're working for a small client as your end client, then nothing's going to change for you. You will still have the sort of decision for IR35 to make yourself rather than the end client. Okay,
so the actual rules in terms of how IR35 status is determined aren't changing. It's just the person.
No, so how they deal with IR35 status disputes and the rules around IR35 are made up with sort of employment law and case law over the years of various sort of cases on IR35 coming to the fore. So how IR35 is determined won't change. So if you're outside IR35 before April 21, then there's a good chance you're outside IR35 after April 21. How it's determined isn't going to change. It's just who's making that determination.
Okay, so in that case, what do contractors have to worry about?
One of the problems that we see, we saw it in the public sector, and we started to see it as the rules were changing or due to come in April 20, was that public sector bodies, but also the private sector organisations now were starting to take a bit of a sort of risk-averse stance on it. So it could just be they didn't want the risk. So let's play it completely safe and let's just say everyone's caught by IR35 rather than having to deal with a case with HMRC later. Or it could be we don't want the hassle of determining all these people individually, so let's just say everyone's caught. So that's the problem that we have with some organisations. Thankfully most are taking a decent approach to it. But the risk we have is that there's this sort of blanket ban on contractors and a blanket decision of everyone's caught, or perhaps not everyone's caught, but we're just not going to work with limited company contractors post April 21 because of the risk or because of the hassle.
And that's what we saw in the public sector when the change happened there.
We saw it a bit.
The concern is that maybe the same will happen.
Yeah.
With the private sector.
You'd like to think in the private sector that people would take a bit more of a commercial view on it and realise the nature of the contracting industry and that sort of contracting workforce. Why is it there? It's not particularly to save tax. It's not because the end clients are saving loads of money on tax. Yes, there's a bit of employers' national insurance that are saved, but it's because people want the flexibility of that contracting force. And if contractors starting to walk because of this blanket ban approach, then they're going to find themselves in a pickle with some of the projects that they're completing still.
Yeah, of course. Okay, and so obviously we don't want blanket bans. So how should clients be going about determining IR35 status? What are the kind of key factors involved that they should be looking
Yeah,
at?
so it's the same as it's always been. We're looking at sort of the case law, we're looking at employment law. One of the three main things around IR35 that you'd want to be looking at are control. So this is the how, the when, the what, the why, the where, all of those things about what's being done in that job. So do you get to, as the contractor, do you get to choose when you do it, where you do it? Do you do it from home? Do you do it from the office? How you're going to do things and why you're going to do it in that way. So do you get to choose that? The second point is around substitution, personal service. So does it require you as an individual to carry out that work, or could you send someone else? So if you're a contractor, then does it require Zoe to go on site and do that work, or if you were unavailable, you had another contract, or you were sick or something like this, could you send someone else on your behalf to carry out that work?
And that would put me more likely to be outside IR35
Absolutely.
if that were the case.
Absolutely.
Same as control, so if I was able to dictate kind of how I work, I would be more likely to
massive pointers towards being
okay.
outside IR35. And the third point is something called mutuality of obligation. So this is, are you obliged to do that work, and is the end client obliged to provide that work to you? And again, if there's no mutuality of obligation there, then it's a good point you're outside IR35.
So those are the three rules. Sounds relatively straightforward, although in the private sector clients haven't had to do that before. So is there any support that HMRC are offering?
Yeah, so HMRC launched a CEST tool, CEST, and that stands for Check Employment Status for Tax. And this tool is an online thing, and it's just for contractors and end clients to go through and just answer a few questions. It is very binary, it is very yes or no, answer a few questions, and then based on the answers to those questions, HMRC will give you a view of whether that contract is caught or not caught by IR35, and that's a view that they, as long as the answers are completed correctly and honestly, then it's a view that they will stand by. Yeah.
Okay. What are the questions based around? Is it the wording of the contract, or the way that the work is carried out?
Yeah, in any sort of IR35 investigation or inquiry, the contract is sort of put to one side normally. So it's about the implied contract a lot of the time. So you could have a perfect written contract, but if the working practices don't mirror that, then that's what HMRC would be seeking to do in any inquiry. HMRC just want to rip up the contract and say, let me ask your end client, let me ask this person sitting next to you, and let's see what the actual relationship is. But the questions are around control, around substitution, about mutuality of obligation, but also other things. So are you, other things that support that decision, so sort of supplementary questions around that, and yeah, that's what it's designed to do, to get to an end result of an inside or outside IR35
Okay. So
decision.
yes, no questions, an online tool for clients to use, and HMRC will stand by. That sounds pretty straightforward.
Yeah, you'd think so, wouldn't you? And it is perhaps too straightforward. So IR35 case law, it's a very grey area, there's so many different things to consider, and the problem perhaps with the CEST tool is they're trying to make it a bit too sort of black and white. So if there was a criticism of it, it's sort of HMRC perhaps are going to be a bit biased when they were writing it, and the fact that we're trying to arrive at black and white answers for something that isn't a black and white bit of tax law, really.
Okay. So the situation could be that a contractor who has been perfectly happily working outside of IR35 could then, following their end client using the CEST tool, find themselves with a different status determination.
Yeah, so
okay.
That's absolutely what could happen. And that's because probably at that point it's the end client that is filling out that CEST tool, and perhaps who's filling it out? Is it the HR manager who's never met that contractor before and actually doesn't know the day-to-day sort of working relationships for them? Okay,
so what happens if I'm a contractor and come April or in the run-up to April my client tells me that contrary to my beliefs I will be working inside IR35 from their in their opinion. what can I do if I disagree with their determination?
Yeah, so there's an appeals process. So really, I think probably what I would say to most contractors is speak to your accountant first. So we would like to think all of our clients, if they have an issue with how they've been determined, they would come and ask us for advice. So I think the first thing to do is to ask your accountant, and then there's a sort of dispute process to this where you would ultimately formally dispute the decision with your end client. They have 45 days to get back to you. And at the same time, I think what I would be asking for as well, and something they have to provide, is their status determination sheet. So when the end client gives you your inside or outside IR35 decision, they also are obliged to provide you with this sort of sheet paper to say, this is how we've arrived at this decision. So get that from your end client, have a look through it, identify the areas where you sort of disagree with what they've said, discuss it with your accountant, and then put together that sort of dispute process. Ultimately though, there's no sort of higher power to this, so it's up to the end client. If they say no and we're still standing by it, then that's it.
And could I use this CESS tool myself as a contractor and answer the questions and see what the determination was?
That's one of the first stages that we'd go through as well. Yeah, so
compare the results, I guess.
That's it. Yeah.
Okay. So if I then appeal this determination using, I think it's called the client-led disagreement process, what, if anything, can I do if the client refuses to reconsider?
So very little in terms of appeal. So in terms of the appeals process, that's pretty much where it ends. So it's the client-led process. So that's where it ends there. You've got a few options really. So if it is going to get to the stage where at April 21 or before you are going to be caught by IR35, then you've got the option to work through an umbrella company. At SG Accounting we have a sister company, SG Umbrella, and we provide free access to SG Umbrella for all of our SG Accounting clients. So we can get you set up with the umbrella company. An umbrella company is just a big sort of employment service really. So we would take on your contract with your end client or with the agency in between, and we would invoice them, collect money from the agency for the work that you're doing, and then you would become an employee of SG Umbrella, and we pay you a salary for that.
And I'd be taxed in the same way that an employee would be doing that job?
Yeah, you would be. So taxed as an employee for the earnings from SG Umbrella. You could keep your limited company, so if you've got a limited company and you think maybe this is a short-term thing, so yes, I'm going to be caught by IR35 then, but actually I'm still looking for another contract that's outside IR35, or I've only got 2 or 3 months left on this, then you probably don't want to bin your limited company. You either want to leave it dormant and work through SG Umbrella, or you could carry on working through your limited company. It's just what it means is that before the money comes into your limited company, it has to be taxed now. So rather than you getting the money in total and you under your limited company having to think about, okay, that's for corporation tax, that's for income tax when I take the dividends out the other end and things like that, it's taxed before it gets there. So money that comes into your limited company is already taxed, you can take it out free of tax. And the third option really is, if you don't like it, sort of walk. Not many contractors are going to be in a position to do it at the moment, but we still know of lots and lots of contracts that are outside IR35. So if you don't like the decision, then that's an option for people.
And I guess there's always the opportunity or the chance to talk to the client about your day rate. You know, if you're going to be out of pocket because your status determination has changed, maybe the client could recompense you by increasing your day rate. Is that a worthy conversation to?
Definitely, and it happens so much in the public sector. Because of that reason, they don't want people walking halfway through a project. As a rule of thumb, we've been looking at sort of a 30% uplift in day rate to take into account the additional taxes that you would pay through an umbrella or by having the money taxed before it gets to your limited company.
Okay. And I guess with all of this, in terms of what's the best option in the individual circumstance, the best option is to discuss it with your accountant kind of before you then approach the client with.
Absolutely, and you can be a bit braver depending on what options you've got. If
Yeah.
you've got someone else knocking on the door saying, I've got another contract for you starting next week and it's outside IR35 and it's the same day rate as what you got, then you can be a bit braver with your own client at the moment to say, this is what I want, or I'm walking. If you haven't got those options, then you're sort of left to just take the umbrella route or
Can we maybe just give people a quick overview of what we at SG Accounting do to support our clients with IR35 generally, and certainly in the run up to the changes coming up in April?
Yeah, so one of the biggest things that I'm sort of proud of in SG Accounting is that we're a fairly large contractor firm, but the way we deal with things is everyone's assigned one client director, and that client director has met 90% of our clients face to face, gone through known every client's individual circumstances, and they're the main point of contact. So that's the biggest thing for our clients, is they've got one client director who's an expert in IR35, has seen all these things 100 times before, either in IR35 over the last 20 years or with the public sector changes coming up. So the client directors are there to support everyone. So as soon as you know something's going on with your own client, as soon as you get that status determination sheet, then it's speaking to the client director and saying, okay, what does this mean? Is it something we can challenge? Those sort of things. We've also provided, or we've put together some additional resources as well. We've got an IR35 hub on our website now, which is designed for our clients to sort of all of the things that we're talking about now. We're going into a bit more detail on all these things so that our clients can go armed with a bit more information and a bit more surety when they go to their own clients and say, look, I want to argue this, or what's the options here?
Yes, there's a number of guides, aren't there, including a guide that can be passed on to the end client or agency that kind of explains what their responsibilities are, and that they should be taking reasonable care to take each case into consideration.
But it's not just clients that we talk to about this. So yes, we talk to all of our clients about it, but we've also been speaking to a lot of end clients, so the hirers of the contractors, to say, look, this is the way it's got to work, and look, this is how you should deal with this. You have got to take reasonable care when you're making these determinations, and this is what it means if you get it right. This is what it means if you get it wrong. And we've been talking to the end clients as well. So yeah.
So it's definitely worth getting your accountant on side.
Definitely.
Well, we've talked a bit about Umbrella. So that's a facility that's available to all SG Accounting clients to be able to switch between SG Umbrella and SG Accounting whenever they want to.
Yeah.
What are the benefits of keeping those two elements in the same place?
But the reason why we did it is because I don't think, especially I think we're going to have a year or 2 years of sort of transition really. So the reason why we did it is that actually no one knows what they're going to be doing in 3 months, or a lot of people don't know what they're going to be doing in 3 months or 6 months. So do people want to close their limited company and go down the umbrella route just to say, I've got another contract that's outside the IR35? And some of these end clients have had to be a bit more commercial in their reasoning. Maybe the ones that are doing the blanket ban now aren't doing the blanket ban in 6 months' time because they realise all of the contractors have moved from Bank A to Bank B that wasn't taking such a hard stance on it. So the SG Umbrella, SG Accounting sort of route, where we can just provide both services for one price, the same price as everyone's always been paying, is it gives everyone a bit of sort of peace of mind really, that no matter which contract they're in, inside IR35, outside IR35, we can deal with it.
Yeah, it's just really flexible, isn't it? And I suppose, and they keep the same contact, so the same client director still looks after.
Yeah,
so I guess they've got one holistic view of their finances, and the tax advice they get can be appropriate to that view of all of their contracts in the same place. The
same client director that they were speaking to for years, however long, as their limited company accountant is going to carry on managing things. The umbrella side of things is managed by SG Umbrella, but in terms of the tax returns at the end of the year and what income have you had from SG Umbrella, what income should you take out of your limited company still, because there's still massive tax planning opportunities here. Just because you're taxed a bit higher through SG Umbrella doesn't mean you're losing all the tax planning opportunities of funds within your limited company. So there's still big decisions there about how much you take out of your limited company and when you take it out. is it pre-April 21, is it post-April 21, is it 10 years in the future? There's big opportunities there in terms of retaining that limited company and retaining that accounting relationship to give you the tax advice.
And that's the end of our IR35 questions for today. Thank you very much for listening. If you're an SG client, just remember that we are always here to answer your questions on IR35 or anything else, so please just give us a call. Thank you.